Caitlin Clark didn't return to Team USA to make a statement, but that's exactly what happened the moment she stepped on the floor. From the outside, it looked like just another roster move, another game on the schedule, another chance to prove herself. But underneath that surface, this return carried months of frustration, debate, and quiet pressure that had been building ever since her name was left off earlier conversations. Fans hadn't forgotten, analysts hadn't stopped arguing, and Clark herself hadn't disappeared. She had been working, waiting, and watching as the narrative kept shifting without her. So when she finally put on that jersey again, the energy in the arena felt different. Like everyone knew this wasn't just a return, it was a test of everything people had been saying. The lead-up alone made this moment unavoidable. Caitlin Clark's rise had already changed the sport at the college level, then spilled straight into the pros, and with that came non-stop comparisons, especially with Angel Reese. Their rivalry wasn't just about stats or wins anymore, it had turned into a symbol, two styles, two personalities. Two fan bases arguing non-stop about impact versus image, skill versus presence, substance versus hype. When Team USA brought Clark back into the mix, it instantly reignited that comparison, whether anyone wanted it or not. This wasn't framed as Clark joining the team, it was framed as Clark being measured again, and that pressure followed her straight onto the court. What happened next is what shocked people. There was no slow adjustment period, no feeling out process. From her first touches, Caitlin Clark controlled the rhythm of the game in a way that doesn't always show up in box scores but is impossible to ignore if you're watching closely. Defenders shaded toward her the moment she crossed half-court. Passing lanes opened before she even made a move. Teammates spaced better without being told. The offense simply made sense with her on the floor. She didn't need to force shots or hunt highlights. Her presence alone bent the defense, and that's when people in the stands started leaning forward, realizing they were watching something familiar but sharper, more mature, more dangerous. And as Clark settled in, the spotlight naturally shifted to Angel Reese. Reese brought her usual intensity, energy, and physicality, fighting for rebounds and battling inside. But under the same microscope, the gaps became harder to ignore. Possessions slowed, scoring chances didn't come as cleanly, the spacing tightened instead of opening up. This wasn't about effort, because the effort was there. It was about efficiency and flow at the international level, where small limitations get exposed fast. Side by side, the contrast wasn't subtle. One player elevated the entire offense without demanding attention, while the other struggled to make the same impact when the game sped up. Then came the moment that sent everything into overdrive. One sequence where Clark pulled defenders toward her, hesitated just long enough to freeze them, then punished the defense with a clean decision that led directly to points. It was simple, almost quiet, but devastating. The clip hit social media within minutes. Replays spread everywhere. Comments flooded in. Fans didn't argue this time. They declared, "This is what Team USA was missing." This is what people tried to explain for months. Meanwhile, Angel Reese clips started getting framed differently, less celebratory and more critical, as if the narrative had suddenly flipped without warning. That's when the media scramble began. Analysts who had downplayed Clark's impact shifted their language. Instead of denying it, they reframed it. They talked about systems, lineups, matchups, anything except the obvious. Some tried to emphasize Reese's intangibles, leadership, and toughness, which are real, but it felt like damage control rather than analysis. Former players quietly contradicted that tone, pointing out how much smoother the offense looked and how much easier everyone else's job became with Clark on the floor. The gap between what people were seeing and what some voices were saying started to grow, and fans noticed immediately. What this game really exposed wasn't just a player comparison. It exposed the tension inside Team USA itself, the balance between performance and perception, between star power that draws attention and skill that drives results. Caitlin Clark didn't dominate by forcing herself into the spotlight. She dominated by making the game simpler for everyone around her, and once that was visible, it couldn't be unseen. The argument shifted from whether she belonged to how anyone ever thought she didn't. At the same time, Angel Reese's role became harder to define at this level, not because she lacks talent, but because the international game demands efficiency and adaptability above all else. By the final minutes, the reaction said everything. The crowd responded differently when Clark touched the ball. Teammates trusted her decisions. the pace felt controlled instead of chaotic. This wasn't about one great play or one hot stretch. It was about consistency and command. When the game ended, the conversation didn't slow down, it accelerated. Fans weren't just celebrating Clark's return, they were questioning past decisions, past narratives, and past priorities. Angel Reese, once framed as the counterbalance to Clark, now found herself under harsher scrutiny, not from haters, but from people genuinely asking whether her game translates the same way at this level. In the end, Caitlin Clark didn't need to say anything. She didn't celebrate wildly. She didn't take shots at anyone. She let the game speak, and the game spoke loudly. This return wasn't just amazing because of how she played, but because of what it clarified. Some debates only end when reality shows up, and when it didn't whisper. It made a statement that Team USA, the media, and the fans can't ignore going forward. The aftermath of that performance didn't stay on the court. It followed everyone off the floor and straight into the wider conversation around women's basketball. Because once the game ended, people weren't just reacting emotionally, they were reassessing everything that led up to this moment. Old takes resurfaced. Clips from months ago were replayed. Decisions that once seemed defensible suddenly looked shaky. Caitlin Clark's return forced a kind of reckoning, not just about roster spots, but about how value is measured at the highest level. What made this moment even louder was how effortless it looked. Clark didn't play like someone trying to prove a point. She played like someone who already knew the answer. That calm confidence translated into smarter possessions, quicker reads, and better outcomes. Coaches trust players who make the game easier. Teammates trust players who see the floor before everyone else does. And that trust showed up again and again as the ball naturally found its way back into her hands during key moments. Not because she demanded it, but because it made sense. Meanwhile, Angel Reese became the focal point of a different conversation, not one rooted in hate, but in expectations. For years, she's been celebrated for toughness, emotion, and presence. Those qualities matter. But at this level, they aren't enough on their own. International play doesn't slow down. Defenses don't wait. If your game doesn't adapt, it gets exposed. Reese wasn't bad, but she wasn't controlling the game either. And in a setting like Team USA, that distinction matters more than ever. The spotlight she once thrived in suddenly felt harsher because now there was a direct comparison playing out in real time. Social media amplified everything. Every Clark assist, every clean decision, every moment of composure was clipped and shared. The comments shifted from excitement to certainty. People weren't asking if she belonged anymore. They were asking how the team ever functioned without her. At the same time, Reese's moments were dissected frame by frame, not to tear her down, but to question fit. That shift in tone is brutal, because once the internet decides the conversation has changed, it rarely goes back. This game also reignited a deeper discussion about fairness and transparency. Fans don't just want wins, they want honesty. They want to believe selections are based on performance, impact, and results, not narratives or optics. Caitlin Clark's return made it harder to argue otherwise. When one player clearly elevates the team the moment she steps on the floor, it forces uncomfortable questions. And those questions don't disappear just because the game is over. Looking ahead, this moment feels like a turning point. Not just for Clark, who has now firmly re-established herself as a centerpiece, but for Team USA as a whole. Decisions going forward will be watched more closely. Roles will be scrutinized. And players will be judged not just on reputation, but on how well their games translate when everything speeds up. Angel Reese still has time, talent, and opportunity to grow into that space, but the margin for error just got smaller. In the end, this wasn't about one player winning and another losing. It was about clarity. Caitlin Clark's return stripped away excuses, softened narratives, and exposed reality. She didn't need fireworks or drama. She let the game unfold naturally, and in doing so, she reminded everyone what true impact looks like. And once that kind of impact is seen, it changes expectations forever.